Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes' Illuminati, the man who rules the world, takes on the head of the global elite in this all-new action-packed John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes' Illuminati in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. I got a comment from a viewer who wanted me to go more in depth on a statement I made in a video regarding comic book writer Mark Waid. Now, this viewer wanted me to talk more about a statement I made talking about how this country was founded by thieves and slaves and opportunists, a comment that I paraphrased from YouTuber Your World, Mr. Superboy, and wanted me to talk more about how this country never had any sort of basic goodness. Now, Mark Waid said that he could not write superheroes anymore because he said that because Donald Trump won the presidency, there was not any sort of basic goodness as related to things, and this was his reason for not wanting to write superhero comics here in America. Well, my response as a heterosexual black man who publishes his own material is that America never had any sort of basic goodness, and never had any sort of basic goodness because most of the people who immigrated here to create the United States of America from England and other European countries never had any sort of basic goodness because most of them were thieves, most of them were most of them were slaves, and others were opportunists looking to go out here and make a life where they could do whatever they pleased in a land where they could have complete power and control. Now, anyone who has studied American history, like I have ever since I was about 9 years old, we know that the United States of America was not run by white people back in the days of the 1600s when British people started immigrating to these lands looking to find what they called the New World. And as they were looking to find this quote-unquote New World, they were looking to go out and look to conquer those lands, and look to conquer those lands by going out here and conquering what they called the savages, which were the Native American people of those lands, who some called Indians at the time, because what they wanted to do was go to India, and they wanted to go to India as part of the New World in order to colonize it and control it and have it under the control of the institution we know today as white supremacy. Now, what they wanted to do as they looked to colonize that land was basically look to control the indigenous peoples of those lands and control their resources, and then take those resources and use them as a way to import and export them to other countries, and basically build a wealth base with these people's own resources that they were given by God as related to their land. He wanted to take control over their land. And again, this is how I can agree with Mr. Superboy or Your World as related to those English people and Spaniards and other peoples like French and Germans, basically them being thieves because they stole these people's indigenous lands and stole their land out from under them by going out here and looking to either deceive them, which is the foundation for Thanksgiving, where the Pilgrims basically were looking to deceive the Native Americans by having them have this feast where they basically looked to, again, give them blankets with smallpox so they could conquer their land. This is how they looked to steal their land after these native people taught them all about how to farm and survive. Instead of going out here and showing gratitude to those people, they showed nothing but contempt for them because their goal was to conquer these lands, subjugate these people's wills. And again, this is why Mr. Superboy is right on that point where he says the country was founded by thieves who stole the land, looked to enslave the indigenous Native American people, but those Native American people, basically, they would rather die than basically be enslaved. And as they would rather kill themselves rather than be enslaved, what happened was you had these opportunists seeing that they could go out here and find labor from Africa and look to go out here and import labor from Africa as part of the Middle Passage. And again, these opportunists look to steal those resources from those people in Africa, working with those traitorous African chieftains, giving them things in exchange for the slaves. So that's why the statement of, again, this country being founded by thieves, slaves, and opportunists, I can agree with your world, Mr. Superboy, on that point. And that's why this nation was never founded on anything as related to goodness. It wasn't founded on anything as related to so-called goodness like Mark Waid wants to claim. No, when it comes to America, America was never a place of goodness. No, those were fantasies created by white supremacy as related to creating propaganda narratives as related to making their conquerors into heroes. And when you are the conqueror, you can basically create the narrative around that person to make them into a hero. But there was never any sort of goodness as related to this country being founded, because this country was basically founded by people who were rejects of European society. No, a lot of people want to believe that Americans came here again on good ideals. No, it was never on any sort of good ideals. No, most of the people who left England, France, and other European countries basically left because they were rejected by their European society, and were rejected because some of these people basically were people who were criminals, and basically the monarchy wanted to empty out their jails, so they would put people on boats and send them over here. Then you would have a lot of people who were basically in poverty, and they saw moving to the colonies as an economic opportunity for them to be able to make a living, because the only people who had money at the time in England were most of the monarchy, most of the nobles, and many of the people who were poor came to America because they thought they would be able to get better opportunities, because the aristocrats basically controlled the economy, and they hoped to basically find ways to get resources for farming and other ways to make a living. This is where we got the whole group of white folks who were Irish and many others getting into indentured servitude. This is what would happen with many of these people. Again, they didn't really have any sort of good intentions whatsoever as related to those indigenous people, and all they were thinking about was getting an opportunity for themselves, as related to their getting power. Again, they never had any sort of basic goodness as related to their values and character. And really, these people, again, would sit there and be talking about how they were these good Christians as related to the Anglican Church that had been established by King Henry VIII. But the whole thing is, none of these people really wanted to follow the Word of God that they created with their King James Bible. No, many of these same people that want to talk about, how they were all about basic goodness, couldn't see how they were basically going out here living in sin as related to the way they treated people, because they were not following those two commandments that Jesus, the Son of God, gave them in his word. One is to love the Lord with all your heart, soul, and spirit, and the other one is to love your neighbor as yourself. And these people never really loved their neighbors as themselves, because had they loved their neighbors, they wouldn't have looked to conquer their lands, wouldn't have looked to conquer the lands of those indigenous Native Americans, wouldn't have gone out here after killing most of those Native Americans, to go out here and import black people to be their slaves, and wouldn't have gone out here and used the Bible as a justification for all of this, when Jesus clearly gave you his word, where he told you to love your neighbor as yourself. Again, this is not what a neighbor does to people, because white supremacy doesn't see itself as a neighbor. No, white supremacy sees itself as a god. And since white supremacy sees itself as a god, and basically it's white folks basically like the king transposing God onto himself, and people like the Pope transposing God onto themselves, They believe that they are justified in doing whatever they please because they believe that since they are God, what they are doing is good, and they don't really care about the cruelty that they are inflicting on the people around them. They don't really care about what they're doing to people. No, this is basically what the system of white supremacy is, because basically the system of white supremacy is the religion where white men and white women believe that they are God over men and believe that they have transposed themselves into gods. And again, this basically is them saying that they have this, they are good because they validate themselves as good. However, God, who is not a man, basically sees these men and women as living in sin and born in sin, like the men that they are subjugating and oppressing. They basically are in greater sin. I would say they basically made humanity into twofold children of hell. But by the way, they went out here and participated in the heinous acts that they did to form this country. But you won't hear them say that. You won't hear people like Mark Waid talk about this. No, Mark Waid sits there and wants to say, oh, Donald Trump is evil. But the whole thing is he can't see the evil that basically allowed him to receive all these benefits, that allowed him to have a 30-year career in comics, how he basically benefited from a system of institutionalized racism, that gave him white privilege, to the point where he could go out here and throw tantrum after tantrum and still be able to keep a job. Meanwhile, a black creator like myself can't even get into the door with a college degree and years of experience building a universe like the SJS Direct universe, having experience in fantasy and science fiction. I mean, this is where Mark Waid doesn't see the whole idea of the white privilege he's benefited from for many years. I mean, this man has been on record for throwing tantrums, but continues to still get jobs. Went out here, spoke against Donald Trump in such a way that basically upset many Warner Brothers executives like David Zaslav, but still is allowed to keep a job. Meanwhile, a heterosexual black man like myself can't even get in the door to even show a script. So this what I want the viewer to understand is that, again, guys like Mark Waid basically, again, are part of that group of thieves, slaves, and opportunists who want to sit there and buy into the lie white supremacy has told them that they are good, when in actuality there was never any sort of basic goodness of people who were willfully and intentionally looking to conquer these people who lived in these lands and take their resources and enrich themselves with their resources. I mean, there was no sort of good intention for any of those people. And again, that's why this country that was founded by thieves, slaves, and opportunists, again, these people have no basic goodness, and they have no sort of basic goodness, again, because they're born in sin. They are children of the devil, and again, look to go out here and kill, steal, and destroy, all while, again, talking about they're serving God when they're not serving God at all, because God will allow people to prosper without, again, destroying things. No, this was all done because of the greed of these individuals who, again, wanted to get out from under a king, because they wanted to establish an institution of white supremacy, a religion that would basically looked to supersede the word of God by, again, transposing itself on the word of God, and look to, again, supersede it and become the official religion of the world, which basically blinds people into seeing that this white supremacy is the institution of the devil. And again, this is something that Mark Waid doesn't understand at all as related to this country that was founded by thieves, slaves, and opportunists who, again, never had good intentions towards the indigenous Native American people that they basically exterminated from this land and North America. They never had any sort of basic goodness towards many of the Africans who they made into slaves, or their descendants, foundational black Americans, by denying us an ability to actualize our ability to compete in this country. I mean, immigrants can come here and get opportunities, but black people, we wind up with our towns terrorized, like Black Wall Street and Rosewood. and are denied the ability to make a living in this country. And even black men ourselves, we are basically scraping for an existence. Nobody wants to talk about that. I mean, Mark Waid don't want to talk about that part as related to this whole situation, as related to things. I mean, Mark Waid wants to sit here and talk about, oh, Donald Trump is the president, and that's why he can't write comics anymore. I mean, to me, that's a first world problem. Oh, Donald Trump is the president. Well, as a black man, I've sat through Ronald Reagan and Reaganomics. I've sat through George W. Bush, say read my lips and no new taxes. I've sat through Bill Clinton, who did more damage to black people with Joe Biden's 1994 crime bill. And I've sat through George W. Bush, who basically just, again, destroyed New Orleans with Hurricane Katrina because of his cronyism by hiring Michael Brown to run FEMA, and his incompetence and that of Ray Nagin basically destroyed New Orleans. And I've also sat through Barack Obama, who promised hope and change and did nothing at all. And I sat through, again, the first Trump presidency and Joe Biden's presidency, which basically, again, all of these different presidents, and he's getting upset about Donald Trump. Well, I look at him and I have to say that he's completely full of it, because, again, you're upset because a guy you didn't like was president. This is why you're going to quit the job that you got through white privilege. Meanwhile, you never did a single thing to help another black creator in this business. And that's why I have to call Mark Waid a big-time hypocrite as I further elaborate on this point, because, again, you're talking about goodness, and again, how are you good? I mean, when it comes to good, this is something that I don't see Mark Waid as. I mean, you're a guy who wrote superheroes and basically got paid for it for many years due to your white privilege, and you never looked at a moment at a guy like me who's been writing for years to say, hey, this is a guy we maybe should take a look at his work. Maybe we should pick up some of his books to see if he is somebody who could fit the DC brand. No, never made that look at a guy like me at all. And that's how I say Mark Waid is full of it, because for me, again, presidents come and go, but you as a person, as related to our Constitution and we the people, could have helped out another black creator, could have opened a door for other black creators, but didn't do it at all because you were too busy enjoying your white privilege at DC, at CrossGen, at Marvel, and being able to make money. But you didn't want to bring another black person in because that meant you would have to step up your game and compete. And he was so busy enjoying his position and wants to go out here and make it look like, oh, I'm hurting as related to this election. Well, I have been hurting for over 15 years dealing with an HR brick wall and not being able to even get a phone call from someone as related to even a basic job at McDonald's. So when I listen to Mark Waid, again, he just pisses me off with his white privilege, pisses me off because he's upset that Donald Trump is the president, but shows me how dysfunctional this comic book industry is, that many of the people who work in this business don't know the history of America, don't know the complete history of America, but talk about they want to write heroes, but don't know that many of the heroes that were put up in American history were put up as propaganda, and many of us don't really know the true story about being a hero. No, we don't know what real heroes are. I mean, I know who real heroes are, like Malik El-Shabazz, also known as Malcolm X. That's a hero to me. Heroes are people like the late, great Dwayne McDuffie, and people out here like Harriet Tubman. Those are heroes to me, and those are heroes because they're willing to stand up for what they believe in, even though they run up against the greatest adversity as related to the system of white supremacy. They are heroes to me. And again, you have Mark Waid talking about heroes when he doesn't know anything about being heroic at all, because he's been given everything. I mean, this boomer has basically been given everything and has enjoyed a great life as related to his career of 30 years. And he wants to sit there and talk about how Donald Trump being president makes him not believe in heroes. Well, the whole thing is, I have been living in a world filled with a lot of evil, and I've had evil done to me, but I still trust in God, and I still try to go on. And again, I look at heroes very differently than Mark Waid, but I'll never get that opportunity to show that kind of opportunity in this modern comic book industry. And that's the saddest part for me, because I have all of the skill and talent. And again, you can't share it with people who don't want to see that talent, because they're more about pushing these narratives of white supremacy and these narratives and ideals of white supremacy, rather than going out here and showing what a true hero is as related to the content of their character and not the color of their skin. Now, if you want to pick up my first full comic and see how I go out here and write heroes, you can pick up John Haynes at Death's Door on Lulu.com in paperback right now, and you can pick it up for the same price it was for the 2022 Kickstarter, and you can pick it up and again see how I go out here and write heroes. And if you want to check out how I write heroines, you can pick up my comic Esteem No Good Deed on Kindle for 99 cents, and you can also find that No Good Deed story in the back of Esteem Blast from the Past. And you can check out how I write heroes and heroines in the SJS Direct universe by picking up the books of the ISIS series, books of the Esteem series, books of the John Haynes series, books of the Spinsterella trilogy, books like my vampire novel Eternal Night and my black sorority novel The Thetas. You can find all those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them at other online booksellers like Draft the Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you'd like to see me make more videos going in depth on American history and American culture, you can drop a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available on Lulu, John Haynes at Death's Door. The man who rules the world takes on the Greek god of death in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes comic book. Get your copy of the first John Haynes comic at Lulu.com today. Now available in paperback at e-readers, Isis, Dark Incubus. The goddess next door gets enthralled in a romantic entanglement with an evil incubus in this all-new Isis series adventure. Get your copy of Isis, Dark Incubus in paperback and e-readers today. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Esteem Horror in the Hamptons. The aspiring angel tries to escape a house of horrors in this action-packed, all-new Esteem series adventure. Get your copy of Esteem Horror in the Hamptons in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.